Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Fishbeck Learning Exchange. I'm Chris Frilen, and today I get to sit down with Molly Denton, an electrical engineer in our Grand Rapids office. Molly's path here began as an intern, and she's gone on to build a career. But while in school, she also created Bridge the Gap, a design competition that's connecting students and firms across the country. Now, we'll get into that story soon. But first, as is typical, as is our practice here on the Learning Exchange, let's start with Molly herself. Molly, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You are so welcome. So looking forward to having this conversation.
Me
I know
too.
you've been on the list for a while, so. But first things first, can you tell our audience a little bit about your role here at Fishbeck, who you are, what you do day in, day out?
Yeah, so I'm an electrical engineer here in Grand Rapids. I belong to the electrical department. I have been with Fishbeck for about 4.5 years now. About 2.5 years of that was on and off as an intern, bouncing back and forth between school and work. And the other 2 years I've been full time, so since about September of 2023. And I work on a lot of different projects. I like a good diversity, mainly on higher ed and City of Grand Rapids projects right now.
Were you ever involved in retail stuff?
Yeah, I was.
Okay.
That's where when Tony Coots when he still belonged to the electrical department, I worked directly under him. He's still my team leader.
Okay.
And that's when I got involved with a lot of Meyer things. And I learned a lot of electrical through the retail lens, which worked out really well for my learning. And then I was able to kind of spread and get into more different market segments after that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wondered because I had seen the interaction that you had with Tony and others in that department upstairs, and so I wondered because I hadn't run into you when I was doing electrical proposals with, say, John Condi for water wastewater.
Right.
So yeah, okay, that's cool. Thanks for that background.
Yeah.
So I know, and we referenced that you started as an intern. We just wrapped up the summer with the interns.
Yep.
There are several maybe that are still with us that kind of carry through. But that's a big deal here at Fishbeck, and I know that it's near and dear to your heart because of your story. So can you, from your perspective, can you tell our audience, tell us what makes Fishbeck's internship program so valuable for students?
So, I mean, Fishbeck's internship program, just like any program, is a great opportunity to learn the role and really see what a company's like before you get there full time. But at Fishbeck, I think we really push our interns to perform the same work and tasks that we do in full-time roles. And I know I've gotten to do that as an intern, and then I got to do it this summer where I was actually passing those tasks over to the interns and really challenging them. And I think that's just a really good and honest way to test out, kind of put the training wheels on and see if this is something that you want to do in a full-time role. Beyond that, it is just a great opportunity. Just like I just said, I mean, with this transition from intern to full-time staff member to almost this more kind of manager or delegator is a really valuable thing that just almost happens naturally at Fishbeck, where we get this cycle going where we're recruiting young staff and we're bringing them in and then almost immediately switching them over into a role where they are able to work with young staff and new staff and learn some of those kind of project management skills that they maybe haven't had a chance to before. And so that creates a really nice natural cycle, I think, that
we were calling it when we were talking beforehand, calling it a growth cycle.
Yeah.
I maybe even started like doodling like a cycle graphic.
Circle of life. Yeah.
Just how my brain works.
Like the life cycle of an intern.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. And you even referenced like I think I don't know if it was in relation to this, so stop me if I'm way off base. Something about forward pass. It's a passing forward.
Exactly. Passing it forward. This Fishbeck that aligns so well with our culture and our vision of wanting to kind of help the next generation of leaders, help the next generation of talent that's coming in. And I use that term generation very loosely. Like every year, every month, every day, we're having people come join us. And being able to do that, especially with the college students who are graduating and entering the workforce, is a really nice thing to kind of share that love and appreciation with them. And then when they receive it, I think it inspires them to do the same thing for the people behind them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's the cycle again.
Yeah.
And it's lifelong learning, which is something we're
Absolutely.
very committed to learning and development,
For
as
sure.
you're aware.
Mm-hmm.
Great. So that idea that you mentioned of gaining real world experience, it leads us naturally right into this next part where we talked about bridge the gap. Because Molly, you didn't just participate in a program like ours, you created something of your own.
Mm-hmm.
So I mentioned at the top and just now that you were bridge the gap. And many of our staff, maybe, here's a shameless plug, may have read about it in the latest episode, the first edition of our Mosaic newsletter, where you were featured prominently.
Yeah.
A great article, by the way.
Thank you.
Read it front to back. Anyway, a national AE student design challenge. That's what that is. Bridge the gap. And it's also a recruiting event.
Mm-hmm.
So for those that aren't familiar with it in more detail, can you kind of tell us what it's all about, how it works?
For sure. So, like you said, Bridge the Gap is a design challenge / networking event that invites, in its current model, it invites students of any year in school, typically college and university students. They can be in master's programs, graduate programs, undergrad, whatever. Invites them out to participate in a multidisciplinary design challenge in which they're assigned to teams of usually 5 to 7. And together they have to design a project in like 2 to 3 hours. It's usually a certain type of infrastructure project. Very short amount of time.
Wow.
Yeah, it's incredible. We give them, it's usually the final product is a poster board. Usually it's either electronic or, real hard board. But together they have to collaborate and work as if they're a multidisciplinary firm and put together a project, and sometimes they'll present it, sometimes we won't put that pressure on them, but they learn exactly what it's like to work in this industry and work with these different people in these different roles. It initially kind of started as an opportunity to learn what kind of roles exist in the industry, especially within architectural engineering. And it was primarily, you could be an architect, electrical, mechanical, structural engineer, or a construction manager. And we've expanded and modified those roles a little bit in different versions of the event. But those are kind of the core 5. And the event just simulates what it's like to be working in an office like what we do every day here at Fishbeck. So they have to collaborate with one another and figure out, okay, what's our floor plan? How do we put these systems in? How are we going to achieve the schedule? And then pull their head up when they're done with the 2 or 3 hours and go, oh my gosh, did we even do anything? Like, what did we even get done? And ask the questions. They're up against the clock, and and they have to rationalize things and figure out, how are we going to get this done in such a short amount of time? Do we have time to do these things? Do we have time to create this big creative element that we want to? They have to ask a lot of the same questions that we ask ourselves every day in the industry. So it's just a really great opportunity for the students to try that. But on the other half of it, on the networking event side of it, is where I think Fishbeck really becomes more interested. So the other element to this is that we invite mentors and judges out, and those are professionals from the industry and faculty from the university who come out and participate. So the mentors are actually working one-on-one with the students, especially if those students are signing up to perform roles that they've never done before. A lot of times I've seen a lot of first years come out and do it, and they've never even heard of electrical distribution through a building. I mean, these are concepts that maybe they know, but they've never worked with it. They don't know how distribution gets laid out or what the main categories are, So people like me now, we get to go out and we help them kind of establish what are the basic elements you need to be concerned about. So if it's in a home, we think about, okay, where are you getting power from? Where does the utility come in? Where's our main disconnect? Where's the branch panel board? And then we kind of go, okay, do we want to do a lighting plan? Do we want to think about power for kitchen equipment? And we kind of just start helping them dissect that a little bit. And again, great opportunity for the students to learn, but then that's amazing for me because I get to see how they respond to my mentorship and the way that I'm trying to teach them. Are they listening? Are they eager to learn? Are they excited? Or are they frustrated and are like, and not really enjoying it? Are they enjoying this role or would they maybe enjoy another one? And that helps me kind of assess, is this someone I'd like to work with? And creates a really great recruiting opportunity for our staff as well. So long answer to the what is this event?
We like those.
Yeah. But that's kind of even, and I could talk about it forever, which I guess is why we're here today.
Well,
but,
I mean, we have some time.
No. We can keep moving. That's it kind of in a large nutshell.
Okay.
Yeah.
Walnut, not pistachio.
Sure, yeah.
Okay. Well, it struck me too while you were describing it, and maybe more as a joke, but like it seems like there's a seat at the table there, maybe for business development or sales and marketing, that could help them understand. Hey, now you need to sell the story too.
Yes, they're totally.
We could go next level on Bridge the Gap.
Yeah,
Bridge it even more.
And you had joked with me too. You were like, what we should do is add an element where we have someone emailing them, like, we need you to come up with a bio for this project so we can put the portfolio together.
Make sure to schedule photography.
Right.
And one of the unique aspects about this, and really challenging, I'm sure, and maybe even in the moment, probably intimidating, and that's where the moment of like growth and confidence comes in, is this team you said there's like a core 5, and it's evolved, you said, since then. Yeah. But like if it has an electrical person on the team, for instance, they're the electrical person.
Exactly.
There's not like a team.
Right. So it really creates this sense of ownership with what you're doing. And I think students just learn so much about themselves through, the way I like to say it is, give me an afternoon of your time and I will either help you figure out what you want to do in your next internship or full-time career, what your next step is, or I will help you rule one out, which people always told me when I was figuring out what I want to do. Knowing what you don't want to do is just as valuable and helping you kind of navigate that career path.
Have you seen that experience? Have you had that experience? Have you seen that happen at any of these events where someone was maybe thinking they were going to be a mechanical focused designer and then they got through and they were like, no.
Yes. I see a lot. I've seen both sides of it. I see it a lot with electrical, but that's because those are the people I'm working with most closely. So it's a little bit biased that I get to see more of them. But so many of them, more often than not, I see the opposite, where they try something new and they were like, this isn't what I signed up for today. They give us preferences of what they want to try, and then we try to kind of accommodate those things. And it doesn't always work out because we get a lot of underclassmen who are interested in architecture, because that's usually like why underclassmen start this program, because they understand it best. It seems very approachable. And then they get in there and they're like, that was a lot. Or they try mechanical and they're like, oh, I didn't know about this whole like system, this whole like kind of tree that exists within a building and how you're sizing equipment. I didn't realize that mechanical has to think about, wall thicknesses and all these different elements of a building that are impacting the air quality that people are breathing. And they start to get a much better picture of what these different disciplines really look like. And suddenly they're not as afraid of it. Yeah. So that kind of goes back to having this ownership with it, where they're learning that not only are they learning kind of these basic technical things about each of the disciplines, but they're also learning that they can handle it, they can do it. And I think that's something that, is applicable not only to young adults in college, but also adults like you and me, like out of college professionals who go through this experience and kind of realize, oh, I'm riding the bike until you realize you're not even like wobbling anymore. And they go, oh, I can do this role. They can visualize themselves in a position like that, and suddenly becoming an engineer, becoming an architect, a construction manager, or a professional in this industry just seems so much more attainable. Yeah. And then that self-doubt goes away.
And that's probably very rewarding and kind of cool to see happen in real time.
Absolutely.
This nervous wallflower that then is like at the end he's like dropping the mic,
Totally.
And that's the design.
Totally.
Boom.
And even better is when I see students that try it for the first time, find out they like it, and then they call me and tell me that they want to do it at Fishbeck. And that's
Hey,
really rewarding to see. Yeah.
tick the box.
Yeah.
You know, that's
Totally.
what we want.
Totally. And the idea there is that we're supporting them just like with Fishbeck's kind of core values. We support them in whatever role they want to pursue. Fishbeck doesn't want people coming in here performing work that they don't want to be doing. We do our best work when we're excited and passionate about the roles that we're in. So if I can kind of show them that that's what I want for them, then they start to see that kind of as an opportunity here at our company that maybe they're not seeing elsewhere. So
You touched on something too. You said when you're observing, you get to see how these students, how these young designers handle the stress and handle those smaller but important team dynamics that occur all the time, every day in the real world, as they say.
Yeah.
And that maybe is something different than traditional education programs show them. I mean, they're going to be learning all the formulas and all the engineering stuff, right? But what Andrew Gill likes to call, I think he calls them, don't quote me, Andrew, power skills,
say,
not
like,
soft skills.
It's not soft skills.
It's power skills.
Yeah.
That's a learning ground, a proving ground right there.
Absolutely. So it's always interesting to see how they interact with one another, and especially which ones are initiating the interactions and which ones almost take on a natural project management role. We see that a lot from upperclassmen who have kind of been doing this. Either they've done the event before, or they've just been in classes and been on co-ops before. They've been working. So they naturally start to go, hey, can you work on this? I need this from you. And they start like asking for specific tasks. And that it's purely just an environment for them to explore what these things are. We're giving them the challenge. We're giving them the content to discuss. So that way those awkward interactions of, say, at a career fair, to compare, at a career fair, you've got people coming up to you having almost the same conversation over and over again, and they're all dressed the same way. They all have the same padfolio, and it can be tricky to really get a sense of who that person is behind the jacket. And when we put them in an environment like this, we take that social awkwardness away, and suddenly you're just working, and you're in the same environment that you're in when you're at work, and you're performing the same tasks and addressing the same challenges, and then you're able to see how are they addressing issues, how are they going about problem solving, and how are they treating other people on their team when someone on their team isn't getting something to them. Do they scoff and get upset and be like, come on? Or are they like, oh, okay, I'll work on this instead. You keep going and let me know when you're ready. Having that positive reinforcement that we see every day. I mean, it's a much larger scale here at Fishbeck. If I'm communicating with our mechanical engineers or our architects, they aren't right next to me across the table. But how I respond to them needing more time or needing support from me is likely going to have an impact on how they get information to me and how they treat me and how they respond.
Yeah.
So developing those kind of skills and developing this empathy and understanding for one another on site is something that I'm hoping they take with them when, after the event, hopefully they take it with them to the classroom and to work and elsewhere. But the idea is that we're targeting college and university students early on at this stage so that when they get to work and when they get to their careers and the workplace, this isn't a hurdle that they have to jump over or an obstacle they have to deal with. This is just how it is.
Okay.
And those challenges and that disconnect isn't something that's thought of as a challenge or a disconnect. It's just kind of like, well, that's just who they are. That's how this is. That's the name of the game. And hopefully it'll never be completely like not frustrating to have to deal with those challenges, to have to deal with a disconnect or have to communicate and collaborate. But if it's just kind of a matter of fact and it's kind of an emotionless thing that, hey, that they just need more time, then that makes it just a much happier work environment for everyone and makes it good.
You touched on, you said a word that I want to pull the thread a little bit more. You said empathy.
Yeah.
Explain you may have just been, you sort of kind of explained right there, but
Sure.
Can you go a little more there? Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So one of the things we had discussed last week was you had asked me, why is it called Bridge the Gap?
Mm-hmm.
And the reason behind that is when I was a first year in school and I was in my first year of my architectural engineering program, they were telling us since day one, it's your job to bridge the gap between the different roles in this industry. And when they say the different roles, they're mainly talking about architect, engineer, contractor. But that was always something that was put on us as students in my class of, 30 some students at University of Cincinnati. We were told you have to bridge the gap between these groups. And that was like it was like our destiny to do this, right? And I took maybe I don't know, maybe you're picking it up. I took that kind of seriously.
Yeah.
And
We're all picking it up.
Yeah. So I basically, when they told me that, I really started diving in and trying to understand better what these disconnects are between architect, engineer, contractor. Generically and typically architects are thought of, they're very abstract thinking, they're really creative, and they have it's really difficult to get them to like bring something into reality. And everyone's going, oh my gosh, how are we supposed to build that? How are we supposed to design that? But that's what they were taught to do in school. When they go through these architecture programs, they're challenged to be creative and they're challenged to be thinking of something outside the box. If you bring a square box design to your architecture professor in school, you're not going to pass.
I guessed. Probably not.
Right. You really have to be pushing the boundaries. So when they're doing those things that frustrate some people, they're just doing their job. Similarly, engineers, they're too black and white thinking. They can't think in the gray. They can't, quite the opposite. They can't be flexible. And why are they so worried about getting it right all the time? Why can't we just think conceptually for a second?
Just feel it.
Come on, right? And the thing is, when we were in school, engineers were taught, if you perform a 20-step problem, 19.9% of the points you get correct. But that last point one, whatever point you miss, you're docked all the points. You don't earn any points for that question. And that accuracy and that level of accuracy and precision that is demanded of engineers, that's really important, because when you get to your career, we're talking about a matter of like lives and safety at that point.
We like the roofs to stay up.
Preferably,
yeah.
right?
Bridges.
So it's when they're so worried about accuracy and they're so worried about are we right or wrong, that's a point of pride we take with our work, is whether we're right or wrong. Again, just doing our jobs, just doing exactly what we were taught. And then contractors, they're so worried about schedule, they're so worried about cost, they're so worried about, are we going to get it done on time? Come on, can we just take a second? What if we didn't put all these estimates together, we'd have more time to actually be building the work? And it's like, they're doing what they were taught to do. Right. And we need them to do it. So in Bridge the Gap, they're seeing all these different roles, and they're seeing the construction manager rushing through making estimates and asking all these questions and looking for that information from you to give it to them. And when you see the pressure that other people are under and you feel the pressure at the same time, you kind of create this bond between the team. And you start to see, I as the electrical engineer have so much to do in so little time, but also the mechanical engineer is under the same stress. The architect has not been able to come up with a floor plan fast enough, and now we're all behind, but it becomes more of a we concept, and you start understanding it and having that care and that understanding for one another is what really directly creates that empathy. So then that empathy is established much earlier in your career, rather than waiting until you're maybe in a management role and learning more about other roles. When you start to go, oh, okay, and you start to understand that after the fact, we're just trying to establish that earlier so that they carry it with them already.
All of that from a design competition that you created.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's amazing to me.
Thank you.
And it's taken off, right?
Yep.
This started, like you said, at University of Cincinnati with you.
Yeah.
And now where's it gone?
So we did our first event in October of 2021 at University of Cincinnati. We had about 40 or 50 students there. And then we did a couple more events. I ran one more while when I was still in school, and then I kind of mentored a group in a third one when I just graduated, and then it went to Kansas City for the Architectural Engineering Institute conference in 2023, and that was huge because we got to see it now instead of just students at the University of Cincinnati competing. We had students from all over the nation, and
you have access to them now
yes,
as like Fishbeck's eyes.
as a recruiter, yeah, and that's been really neat too. And then we did it again the year after we did that in San Jose, California. I think I flipped those. San Jose was 2023 and Kansas City was 2024. Yep.
Okay.
But yeah, so it's going different places. People have tried different versions of it at their own universities, small scales, and there's hopes that it's going to continue and people are going to keep taking. There's a how-to guide out there that I wrote about how to do it. So students or, professionals, whoever, can access that and see how did I do it and how can they maybe modify it to fit their scope and what they're trying to do. So the information's out there.
Wow. Now, a big question has asserted itself.
Okay, yeah.
Maybe the best way is just to say, why? What led you to create this? I'm sure there were other recruiting events. There's other design competitions out there.
Yeah.
What was it?
So there's a couple things that come to mind. I remember sitting in my room in would have been my fourth year of college or going into my fourth year and getting ready to be president of our AEI student chapter. And I was kind of trying to figure out, how am I going to leave my mark and contribute to this organization in a way that I can be proud of? And I know that when my year is up, I can walk away and feel like I gave it all I got. And of course that was absurd because I was doing that during school, 18 credit hours, whatever. But I loved it. And it was this project became one of those things that just gave me life to work on, and it never really drained me of my energy. It got me excited.
Usually a good sign.
Yeah. And so from the start, I initially was like, well, let's just do like a trivia night, and get architectural engineering students out there. My goal was always around people. It was always centered around people. I really wanted to get younger students meeting some of the specialized faculty sooner, get them meeting professionals sooner, because your early years of engineering school and design school are always so sad. It
gets better.
Right. There's so much work to do, and you're doing all these weed out classes, and you don't get to see the fun stuff yet. So I was trying to figure out a way to kind of bring that to them earlier to help give them that inspiration to keep going. And then it turned into a call with a friend being like, hey, I have this idea. Do you think it would work? And they were like, yeah, I could see this coming together. We could do something like this. Maybe we could, talk to this company or that company. And then I called my dad, who has been my mentor and career coach since I was like in kindergarten.
Convenient.
Yeah. And I remember him telling me like, oh, you could get companies to sponsor t-shirts and then you could really start like marketing this. And he's got that marketing kind of brain too, and that business brain. Yeah. So he was very supportive, and he's always been telling me to, like, since I was a kid, he's been telling me to try on the jacket, is what he says. This is related to his career advice. So he never cared what I did when I grew up. Whenever we were having the conversation about what I want to be or what I want to do, the answer did not matter. What did matter is if I had an answer. And I remember riding in the car with him, driving home from tennis practice, riding home from school, or driving to colleges to kind of see what we want to do. And the answer bounced back and forth from artist to dolphin trainer, right? There was everything in between.
Always a dolphin trainer.
Yes, absolutely. Marine biology came for all of us at one point or another. And eventually we got to architect and then engineering, and we kind of figured, and then I didn't know that you could do architecture and engineering in the same thing until I got to University of Cincinnati and they offered it. But he always told me when I was thinking about these many different roles that I would tell him, he'd say, try on the jacket, go tell people that's what you want to do, go tell them that's what you're going to go to school for, and see how it feels. And then, next time we're in the car together, you can let me know if you're still on that or if you've switched again. And that was a really nice way to say, okay, like, how does it feel to like say and own this role that I'm saying I want to do? And you could tell pretty quickly just by saying it and testing it and like saying it in front of other people and showing other people how you do it, if that's something that feels right to you. And a lot of times you can tell if it does not feel right. It's probably a little bit easier to tell if it's not right. But that's what Bridge the Gap does, is it offers this chance to try on those jackets, try out those roles, and then hopefully leave saying, yeah, I feel good about this one. I want to keep trying it out. I want to keep exploring it. Or that jacket may have been, the wrong style for me. I'm going to leave that for someone else.
Corduroy.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you've taken, it occurs to me just now, and we have to wrap this up because we're running on time, unfortunately, because I feel like we have found a passion point of yours.
Yeah, for sure.
You've taken your dad's advice
Mm-hmm.
that he crafted for you.
Yeah.
And it was so useful for you that you have shared it now.
Yeah.
In a different way. Instead of telling everyone to try the jacket on, you've created a way that they can do that
Mm-hmm.
in a specific career path and see if it fits.
Mm-hmm.
And then also be encouraged from someone who's been through that to say, it's okay. Doesn't
Yeah.
fit. There's one right here next to you. Try that
Yeah,
one on. you know?
Exactly. Yep.
And that's a wonderful legacy for your dad personally.
Absolutely.
And then it's also awesome for you
Mhm.
and for us
Yeah.
at Fishbeck. So
Yeah.
I really appreciate you sitting down and going through that with us.
Thank you.
And I
yeah.
hope people that are inspired by it will especially in Grand Rapids, if anyone's inspired anywhere, of course, but those that are in Grand Rapids will find it easier to maybe run into you and ask you more about it, because I know you'll talk to them about it.
I'm so unapproachable.
Right. And you can also read about it. I know I've said that before. Molly, thank you for sharing your
Thank
story.
you so much. Yeah.
And I'm excited to learn more about or see where it goes.
Me too.
Okay.
Thanks, Chris.
And thank you guys for spending part of your day with us here on the Fishbeck Learning Exchange. We'll be back soon with more stories from the people who make Fishbeck such a great place to work and to grow personally and professionally. And that's it for me and Molly, but we will see you next time on the Fishbeck Learning Exchange.